first Mauritian satellite, a CubeSat, Meosat-1, was successfully launched today on board the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket mission, SARS-22/SPX-22, from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 5:29 p.m. UTC. The Mauritius Imagery and Radio Telecommunications Satellite 1, Meosat-1, was built by a team of researchers at the Mauritius Research and Innovation Council, MRIC, under the auspices of the Ministry of Information Technology, Communication and Innovation. The local amateur radio society also supported it in collaboration with experts from AAC Clyde Space UK. Mauritius was the winner of the third-round Ungana/JAXA Kibo Cube program in 2018. JAXA awarded the nation the opportunity to build and deploy a 1U Cube satellite through the International Space Station, ISS. In February, Meosat-1 was handed over to JAXA to be deployed from the Japanese experiment module, Kibo Cube on the ISS. The primary objective of the Meosat-1 is to acquire satellite technology through the design process, design review, assembly, integration and testing. In parallel, the MRIC has set up a ground station located at its premises in eBay, which will serve to control and operate the Meosat-1. This ground station will also allow the receipt of data and telemetry from other satellites. The ground station is being equipped with a flat-sat module, a replica of the 1U, enabling engineers to simulate all the required maneuvers before sending the command to the CubeSat. The flat-sat module is a key tool for the Mauritian engineers to design future CubeSats after the Meosat-1. The Mauritian Meosat-1 is Africa's second satellite in 2021, bringing the total number of African satellites to 44.
Africa needs to be in space. There's no choice, in my view. Being behind in that area costs African nations quite a lot. For instance, for communication, for telephone, for education, remote education to their provinces and stuff, they pay hundreds of millions of dollars rent to get the bandwidth from private satellites and so on and so forth. Even if you look at that, it'd be enormous saving if they had their own communication satellite. And also now, with the miniaturization that I mentioned, you have CubeSats. They're like 10-centimeter cube, and that's one unit. You can have a 6U where you can have quite a few things, and that you can launch.
Is that what we hear when we, for example, like Uganda sent a satellite to space recently, and
Kenya did one.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, what's different about the Kenyan satellite? It was built by engineers from a private company in Kenya. That's a departure from
private sector investment in space in Africa is happening.
And was launched by SpaceX.
Yeah.
And so that's very early stage, but it should be encouraged. I think Africa is wasting quite a bit of resources through internal wars and stuff. I'm not saying it's only in Africa, because wars happen around the world, as we know now. But leaders should make every effort possible to avoid these things and focus on what's important for the future. Being present in space is controlling your own financial transactions, controlling how you grow crops from space. You can map, you can see where moisture is low or high, and so on and so forth. It's even important for national security. So it's not a choice. You have to be there. And to do so, I think regional cooperations,
yes.
like Kenya has on San Marco Island a launch pad that Italians use. It's near the equator. As you know, when you launch from the equator, you get the Earth rotates faster at the equator, so you get all that velocity attached to it. And so, the launch could be in Kenya. The satellite could be assembled in Uganda. Some of the electronics could be done in Ethiopia and so on. And
research happens some other places.
Yes, absolutely. It's not prohibitively difficult.
Right. I mean, prohibitive in terms of resources could be, but when you pool resources, I guess.
Absolutely.
But is Africa falling behind the space race at this point? Is that something that worries you?
It worries me, yes. Nigeria has done several iterations of space launch. For instance, they hired an English company that did their first satellite. They had their engineers go in England to work, but now they're gradually moving the control center in Nigeria and then doing some of the work in their own. So there's a lot of not highly organized Africa-wise, but these countries are trying.
That was Ethiopian-American space scientist.
Nine Kenyan engineers designed and developed Kenya's first Earth observation satellite that is set to be launched Easter Monday. The satellite, whose cost was 50 million shillings, was developed in 2 years and will join 50 satellites so far launched by African countries. Mashirima Kapombe met 3 of the 9 who say the launch is a milestone that Kenyans should own and be proud of.
At the Kenya Space Agency Laboratory in Nairobi, Rose Wanjiko, Patan Odhiambo and Captain Alois Were show me a prototype of Taifa 1, a 3U Earth observation satellite that they, among 6 others, designed and developed in the past 2 years. Rose, an aerospace engineer, says she was always fascinated by machines in the air.
At first, I wanted to create the most safest aircraft. That's why I went into aviation.
But her vision grew when she was recruited among 9 engineers to develop Kenya's first 3U nano satellite. As the project lead, the challenge was more compelling than her childhood dreams.
And so the first thing the team had to go through is to be able to understand the space environment. What temperatures are we going to be experiencing for the satellite? What occurrences can happen, even the time of where the sun is positioned.
Patan Odhiambo, an electrical and electronics engineer, graduated from Jomo Kenyatta University in 2019. He joined the team a year later when the project began.
My dad was a physics and chemistry teacher, and he used to operate a lot on our radios. So I fell in love early with capacitors and resistors.
His job on the project was to make sure the satellite communicates effectively.
My task is to basically design the radio link. There is something called the link budget. How much power does the satellite have to transmit for it to be able to reach the ground station?
In layman terms,
so as the satellite takes images, it shouts to the ground station, hey, this is what I have seen. And now the ground station can be able to pick this up, and we take it up as human operators, and we can act on the same information.
We all know that space finds application in virtually all aspects of human endeavor. If you are talking transportation, if you are talking TV and broadcasting, if you are talking broadband communications, navigation and positioning, weather forecasting.
Captain Alois Were is a mechanical and structural engineer. He studied at the Technical University of Kenya and later mastered space in Nigeria.
When we talk of 3U, we are talking of 3 units of cubes. In satellite technology, 1 cube measures 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10. So for Taifa 1, it is 3 stacked units, which is 10 by 10 by 30.
Were says the structure of the satellite serves as the house of all its components and is made of aluminium.
The satellite will be flying in this horizontal position, this orientation, with deployable solar panels. In this case, we call them solar arrays, so that they have maximum illumination of the solar energy from the sun.
Why aluminium?
Because it has better thermal characteristics, and equally, it has good characteristics to withstand the harsh space environment.
The testing and manufacture of the parts was done in collaboration with a Bulgarian aerospace manufacturer. The satellite will only operate for 5 years.
For the satellite to stay in orbit, it has to go at a certain speed. Over time, the batteries are not as powerful because of use and reuse. And so over time, the satellite starts to slow down. And as soon as you start to slow down, you start to lose the altitude of your orbit, which is what is called orbit decay. And so because as as it decays, it enters into the the atmosphere of Earth. It starts to, there's a lot of friction with the air particles that now causes it to burn up.
Rose, the lead engineer, is among a government delegation that will witness the launch from the US. She says current Kenyan investment in the space economy is limited, necessitating partnerships for satellite launches for African states. Taifa 1 will be launched by SpaceX aboard Falcon 9 rocket at Vandenberg Base in California on April 10th. It will orbit the Earth vertically, parallel to the Sun. Taifa 1 is a first in the investment of a constellation of Earth observation satellites set to be launched over time as Kenya spurs its growth in satellite development capabilities and probably grow more engineers like Rose, Patton and Alois in Kenya's space economy. Mashirima Kapombe, Citizen.
NT to learn more about Agenda 2063.
Now, it's been a good week for space enthusiasts in Africa. Zimbabwe and Uganda launched their first satellites aboard a NASA rocket. And South Africa held a groundbreaking ceremony for an Africa Deep space ground station, which will help NASA track missions to the moon and beyond.
All right, let's get started. Where is my crew for this session? We're moving to our next session, Peace and Prosperity Partnerships. As we talk about the Global Sustainable Development Goals, and I look at goal number 16, which is peace, I realize that it's sort of like focused very much on conflict prevention and those things. And there's a whole engineering community that's been talking about how do engineers themselves have to promote peace. And other ways we can design things differently that doesn't create the conflict or add to the conflict. So let's say we know water or lack of water creates people movement, which creates conflict. So how can we solve the problem of conflict which are created by lack of water or food shortages? Those are things that are preventable through engineering principles. If I could get all my panelists up here for this session, we're going to be talking about partnering for peace and prosperity from a different perspective. Normally people talk about absence of conflict or preventing conflict, but again, we're looking at it from a design perspective. And so we have a quite, let's say, an interesting panel. People might wonder, why are we on this panel, Partnering for Peace and Prosperity? Peace and prosperity comes through people having enough food, enough water, enough shelter, enough energy, that their lives are about prosperity, and inclusion is a big part of the Global Sustainable Development Goals. So we have here in the room Dr. Aoki, Ted Nobia, and Dr. Patricia, and on the line we have Zephanie, who is University of Hawaii, and they're doing some great work there, and we have Dr. Ezra from Delaware State. So really a great conversation is to be had, and it will be ably led by our own Inanga Fale, who is part of the program board for Oaseas project. Inanga.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. All right, I believe we have everybody online here, and as Dr. Nelson highlighted, we have a very interesting discussion here, partnering on peace and prosperity in regards to space. And so one of the things I want to do is give each panelist about 3 to 5 minutes to do a brief introduction of them. Can we get Dr. Kenneth Hubert's slides up?
So good day, everyone. My name is Kenneth Hubert with Teach Truth Africa. It's a program which we started 4 years ago to democratize access to Earth observation data for the whole continent. Our program now is actually hosted by the South African National Space Agency, and we are working with partners across the continent. One of the partners actually sits in Kenya, that is the Regional Center for Mapping. We have a partner in Senegal, Nigeria, Tunisia, and we continue to work with other partners, especially African Union Commission. So some of the products that we have like one on water, which supports water availability over the continent, supporting access to water, which is very key. Then another product we developed is data on crop productivity, the probability of cropping across the continent, which we co-developed with partners across the continent at 10 meters. It's very useful. Currently working with partners like FAO to support crop type mapping in some of the countries like Rwanda and Mozambique. And also we have other products which are actually free, including free training as well. also we connect with different partners supporting the academia, governments, different stakeholders in the continent, and also the message of supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. So our motto is unlocking the promise of tomorrow from the patterns of the past. And as the moderator is working on the slide, so as I mentioned, we are powered by Amazon Web Service, who's based in Cape Town, South Africa, and we support the whole continent to access this data. So as we continue the journey, I mentioned some of the content products that we developed, and we're supporting these national development agendas for different countries, supporting water security, food security, and most of our priorities are more to engage with different countries, different partners, and also supporting climate action. And also we work with our partners like Esri to provide this data for the whole continent through the Africa Geoportal. Then also we've been working closely with different countries to support what we call impact stories. One of the successful stories we had was the mapping of mangroves in Zanzibar, supported climate action. Then we also supported the relocation of giraffes in Lake Baringo. It was 2 years ago when they were having floods, and you can ask yourself how the giraffes got themselves in the middle of the lake, because there's a small island. So supporting conservation is one of the areas as well, and also supporting some of the phenomena, like in the south we have the Okavango, which we are working in Botswana, supporting the particular assessment, which is a shared resource between 3 countries. And as we move forward in different countries, this is the story I mentioned about the mangroves, working with champions in different countries, because data is about the people to empower the actual ecosystem. And also we've worked closely with the Coastline Service, which is a recent product, the whole continent, covering 38 countries, very impactful. Even we launched this product last year at COP27, very impactful to see that if you are working in the conservation of biodiversity, that you can work at somewhere where things have changed over 10 or 15 meters, very, very dangerous for the coexistence with the different partners. So this is just an overview of the Coastline product, helps you get the changes in the different hotspots for the whole country or continent, and it's free. Even there are people who are asking about data outside the continent. So as finalize, there was a special mentioning about supporting mining activities. Actually, 2 years ago, we supported Ghana through the Ghana Statistical Service to see how we can see assessments from space. And then also recently we had engagement with Madagascar through the Department of Foreign Affairs to Australia. So we were able to show them the impact of different mining activities in different sites. And we are working with a professor at the University of Antananarivo. So all the work we do is based on the champions in different countries and seeing how we can help in the restoration efforts of these activities. So as we look through the service, you can see changes and impacts from space and support different field teams and even citizen-generated data to be part of this particular ecosystem. And the assessment is very clear, and working with different partners, we are able to document a lot. And then also, since I'm here with you, is to see how we can connect with you. I introduce you to our online learning platform, as well as other opportunities. Like now, we are supporting some universities in improving their curriculum in Earth observation. So this comes in as a free resource. And also there are many ways you can connect with us, including our contacts. And finally, thanking the organizers of this event for bringing us together in this ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. As you were talking, the thing that came to my mind is that you leverage data to drive peace. And so you align your mission with a need in the community. We're going to move forward to Dr. Patricia Mubert to present.
Thank you. It's Dr. Patricia Mugembi. No problem. Thank you so much. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the country director for CoAfrica Kenya. CoAfrica as an organization is based in 9 countries, and we basically utilize our youth. As you know, Africa has the youngest population, to make an impact in communities. And I love that the Oaseas initiative actually is to ensure African participation, and brings a level of Pan-Africanism. There's something that Richard said earlier, that even though they had data is not useful without that last mile, which is the human mile, where you engage citizens right on the ground, so that that data then is of use or can be used towards the SDGs, towards peace. And that's what we do. Our expertise is in dealing with communities and working with people. And we have used, as an organization, two principles. One is using human-centered design, or what you call design thinking, where we put people at the center of all the solutions. And that's what SDG is about. It's about people. If space and getting data and getting all this knowledge is actually supposed to make life better for us as people. So we use this design thinking approach, which embraces empathy and observation, and understanding what is important to the communities, and using ideations and experimentations to solve a myriad of problems. The other thing, even the other one. This one is worse. The one is worse? Yes. Let's see.
Can we project?
Okay, let me try and project my voice, so that we can continue. Then, of course, we have what is getting a bit common here in Kenya, maybe across, we use community-led development. In other words, there is no development without involving the people, like the PWD motto of nothing for us without us. And it's important that we involve communities, we learn, listening and learning. There is one thing that we've learned as an organization, is that communities have a lot of indigenous knowledge that you will never get in any textbook. And you need to learn to listen, because if you're going to a place where it's dry, these people have lived there for years. They therefore have learned how to survive there, even though you may look at it and wonder, how does anybody live in such an area? They are able to know somehow with the indigenous knowledge where the water is, where the rains are, and things like that. And even as we utilize data, and we listen to the conversations of the communities, we are able to integrate the two, the indigenous knowledge, together with the data and the research that we're able to get from satellites, to then work towards the same 17 SDGs, towards the well-being of humanity. From where we sit as an organization, there are many ways that we can leverage what the data that we're talking about today. And I really like what Dr. Mubert said about some of the things we've been able to impact people on the ground. So indeed, for us, we see that things like agriculture and food security through analysis of rainfall patterns is important for communities in terms of promoting health and well-being through disease surveillance. And I'm talking about not just people, but livestock and wildlife. Looking at enhanced education, because some of these places, they do not even get internet. We don't have the food pillars, but if you use satellite, then there is a good opportunity for all children to get the education that is required. We're looking at things like mapping of water resources. Where is the water, and how can we then leverage on those water resources for the betterment of the community? And of course, security, which is utilized because we are able to monitor things like cattle rustling, movement of cattle, and things like that, which bring about peace. So for me, I also like, there was an earlier speaker who said that there has to be a shift in our mindset that space is not an elitist thing, but that we can use this knowledge for the betterment of humanity. And I love that Dr. Mube actually said that the data he has is free for Africa. I like that because many people want to commercialize this, and therefore there is a limitation of the benefit that people can get from this kind of information. Therefore, it's important that we have a balance. Sustainable development is really a balance between the current generation and the future generation. And this balance is between social well-being, the environment, and of course, economic growth. And so that from a core Africa perspective is that we are able to utilize the communities and understand what is important to them, and utilize this knowledge for the betterment of humanity and for peace, as we're talking about today.
I really appreciate your comments highlighting and how you brought in design thinking, and that the community is informing your work. And really that's very critical, because you're meeting people where they are, and you're figuring out the problems that we're trying to solve. The next panelist that we have is Dr. Patrick Mulieki. I apologize. Do we have Dr. Patrick on the line? Or is our online panelists, are they still there? Okay, so we're going to move forward to Dr. Oki. Did I pronounce it? Oki? Oh, okay, sorry, my apologies. So could you walk us through your organization and tell us a little bit about yourself? Let's pull up your slides.
Thank you very much. My name is Shohei Aoki. I'm the founder of Nakuja Project, the project developing a rocket in Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. So we started our project in 2019, almost 4 years ago. Then we have a progress. So I'm going to take you through our journey since 2019. Now the project is aiming to develop a liquid propellant rocket, which can actually bring the non-satellite into LEO. So it's a huge milestone, but we are working on it. We have so far established technology that can develop a solid rocket, which is basically a small rocket, but we created it from scratch, meaning that we built our rocket using locally available materials, and also the solid rocket motor, which was not imported, but we built locally. Now, in the presentation, in the next slide, I have described this is our team, which comprises more than 40 students, and also our colleagues. Some of them are here, Dr. Manegene, and also yesterday, Dr. Mushiri was chairing the meeting, and some of them. Now we have different teams like flight control and avionics, propulsion, and also we are working with KSA, Kenya Space Agency. Visited Marindi Space Center, exhibited in the conference, and also they are supporting our launch, which is very important. Next slide. So yeah, this is our milestone. So we are working on our third model as well as a liquid propellant engine. Next, please. As I mentioned, there is development. So we started from N1 rocket in 2019 to 2020, then N2, which we successfully launched in Seoul last year, November. Then we are working on the third model, which is N3. So basically, we are scaling it up. Then our current milestone is 2,000 meters, 2 kilometers. And also, liquid propellant engine is using fuel, which is the ethanol, and also the gas, oxygen, as oxidizing. So we expect that we are going to conduct a static firing test in this year, 2023. So I'm going to show you some videos. So please play. So this is a video which is capturing our progress. So basically, this is a launch in N1 rocket. We are repeating and we are improving continuously. So this one reached at 50 meters, less than 50 meters. But for the next one, N1, our model in November last year was aiming at 500 meters. And it was equipping the camera on board, telemetry system for the communication with the ground station, using a fiberglass body, and a scaled up solid rocket motor using a KNSP as a program. So yeah, you can play. This is a video. So for the small scale, we can launch it in our JQuad campus. However, there is a regulation which should be limiting our launch up to 400 feet. So that's why we need assistance from the Kenya Space Agency, so that can help us to so this is a video for the N2. We launched it from the campus for the small scale testing. Then we went to Isiolo to test our several rockets, which equips a reaction wheel control system, flight control, active fin control. So that was our achievement. So this is most successful Perkera N2. Yeah, so this is M3 rocket, basically the scaled up model, but body was upgraded to aluminum body, and also the SRM, the solid rocket motors, was improved. So there are so many students working on the internship. Initially, there were only 6 JQuad students. Now there are more than 40 students from all over Kenya. DECUT and the Kenyatta University students are also working on it. And we had the application for more than 400 students in Kenya, but it was not possible for us to accommodate all of them. So we just selected just a few. So we published the papers on our research, and we are, so this is a couple of photos showing our progress about the solid rocket motors. As I mentioned, we are making from scratch. The students are working on the nozzle and combustion chamber, and also welding and grinding, metal processing. So we are testing it in JQuad. The firing test is dangerous, so we're doing it at the field. So I'm showing you one of the tests. So this is a setup. We have a measurement system that can measure the thrust, which is generated. I think smoke will be coming out. So this is the thrust generated from the rocket motor. So we are on the way for improving our theoretical thrust. So this is aluminum fiber body, and also the this is a launch pad. So we are making our M3 rocket body. Also frozen. So this is about the airframe system. So mainly the mechanical students are working on it. So yeah, this is it, which is equipped on the launch pad. So we are testing our aerodynamic stability, the measurement, and next one is a parachute recovery system. So we need to recover it safely. So we are working on it using a pyrotechnic. So it's basically a gunpowder to eject the parachute from the rocket. And this is a facility to test it safely, because the safety is our primary concern. We are testing a parachute, following it from the building to confirm if our parachute will be expanded safely and successfully. So this is our avionics bay, which is keeping our circuit system. This is a flight controller made by students. So this is not a product made by the students. Yeah. So a communication test using a drone. And this is a system to capture the gyroscope value, accelerometer, all the sensor data from the rocket to the ground station. So this is a flight control system using active fin control using the sub motor. And finally, the liquid propulsion system, we are making it combustion chamber into an injector and gas feeding system. So this is a diagram for the piping, and we are testing our performance now. So this is the final slide to talk about the way forward. We are expecting to launch the M3 rocket in November this year. Then also the liquid propulsion rocket engine, the firing testing this year. Then also we expect collaboration with the NGO, private sector, public sector universities. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Nice. Thank you. And I really appreciate you highlighting how in preparing for making sure that space is for all, you incorporated education and internships deeply into your program. And that's really important as we look at the path forward and the use of local materials. So we have 3 online panelists, and so if we can bring them up as well. And then I'll ask everybody to just give a brief overview of your opening remarks, and then we'll get into the discussion. So we're going to start off with, I see first is Professor Isra.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank Dr. Claire Nelson for inviting us to this great conference. I see some familiar faces here, and just would like to greet everyone and say thank you in advance for your kind attention. The Center for Global Africa, which I conceptualized at Delaware State University here in the U.S. in the state of Delaware, is an advocacy. It is a research and consulting institution that works with our historically Black colleges and universities in general. Here in the U.S., I'm not sure if everyone knows, but we have at least 100 universities that were founded, some of them as early as the mid-1800s, because as institutions, the formal educational places did not allow us to attend during and post-slavery. So we created our own institutions, and many of them still exist today. So we have at least 100 of them. And the Center for Global Africa works as a convening point and as a mediating institution to work with those institutions in general to filter the intellectual capital of the universities and the specialties of the professors to assist directly with African development. And so as part of that mission, we have a partnership with the African Union as a futurist institution aimed at working to help facilitate the objectives and aspirations of Agenda 2063. And so our partnership is with the African Peer Review Mechanism. And for those who do not know, the African Peer Review Mechanism, or APRM, is an agency of the African Union that evaluates governance and socioeconomic performance of nations with the view to make recommendations that governments implement, all in alignment with Agenda 2063. And so this is our 5th year. We're having our 5th year anniversary this month, actually, with the conceptualization of the Center for Global Africa and with the APRM partnership. So we're really excited about the years ahead. But we've worked with APRM and with African nations in general in terms of capacity building, particularly related to health governance and governance itself. And so it's great to be here at this conference to find and look at ways and means that the support systems that we can put in place can be directly tied to some of the great goals and aspirations that you have in general. I didn't put together a formal presentation, but let me just say that Our historically Black colleges and universities have always been linked to high-level research, even though it may not get the headlines. We do great things at those universities. And if you look at Black America today, you'll see that an overwhelming great majority of people that you know who are professional and who have taken on great seats of responsibility and accomplishments in society, they come from our historically Black colleges and universities. And so as we look at this next phase of Africa and space-related ideas and designs and structures that need to be put in place, we can add great capacity as partners working directly with African nations and institutions to help facilitate that pathway. I think you would have to look at this dimension of sovereignty as a new way, as well as looking at what happens with the domain of space, because things change over time. And now governments and institutions in Africa have to point their attention to what's happening with space-related technology and the benefits that can be derived from focusing on and placing resources directly into human capital that will be the forms of knowledge that will help Africa become the continent of Agenda 2063 as it's been envisioned. And, you know, if you look at Europe just a few centuries ago, when it was common thought that the earth was flat and you could be charged with heresy and put to death for teaching, thinking, or believing that the earth was round and revolved around the sun, you know, look at what has happened, you know, over the past decades in the way that space research and technology, you know, has advanced, you know, amongst those groups of nations who now, you know, become superpower nations with the advancement of this knowledge, that now Africa has to look at ways and means in which it can be at the forefront of creating specialized approaches that relate directly to African issues and African problems, so that generations of scientists could be trained and focused on African solutions to these African issues in these high-tech ways. And so I'm really excited about the possibilities of what we could do collectively. And so the Center for Global Africa is an advocacy and an agency here at this conference to assist in that way, to be a convening point for the action steps that will come out of this conference that we would like to directly align with our great historically Black colleges and universities here. So I'll pause there and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Ezra, for highlighting the importance of strategically creating partnerships, and then the importance of HBCUs and how reaching back across the continent can aid in capacity building and really building out a good roadmap for space. So what we're going to do now is move on to our next panelist on the screen. We have with us a faculty member, Professor Zeppelin. My apologies if I mispronounced your name. But could you give us a little bit of overview of your organization with the University of Hawaii, and then your role as a trustee with the NAACP Foundation?
Aloha, nui loa, everyone. My name is Zephanie Smith-Eisenstadt, and what I'm excited to do is just to kind of zoom out a little bit. I'm happy to share about some of the work that I do, but what I think is most important is that we kind of start to bring this home in the half an hour or so that we have left. So it's definitely a pleasure to join you from the middle of the Pacific Ocean to discuss this critical topic of the SDGs for space and implications for equity and inclusion and human rights on Earth and in space. And of course, the 5 Ps of sustainable development, starting with people, as mentioned just a few minutes ago by Patricia in her explanation of human-centered design thinking. You got people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. This framework highlights how the SDGs are indeed intertwined, all working together to build the world we want by 2030, 2045, 2063. The bottom line is that we can't have one without the other. And so let me just start by sending you all so much warmth and a special mahalo to the organizing body of this convention, and of course to Dr. Nelson, who I finally had the pleasure of meeting in DC during the Apollo to Artemis gatherings convened by the Space Council in partnership with NASA during Black Space Week, which is inspired by the work of the US-based Black and Astro organization. So I was honored to participate in the Artemis Generation, the Futures Roundtable at the White House alongside, I got to tell you, the most brilliant and beautiful group of scholars and STEMpreneurs I have ever seen, most of them being representatives and graduates of HBCUs, Professor Ezra. So it was really, I think, a historic moment. A couple of fast facts about me. My background is in government. I do have experience working in each branch. So in the US, that's legislative, executive, and judicial, and at every level. So that's local to global, from the work that I did growing up in California all the way up to the work that I continue to do today with the United Nations. So public service is my passion, and I want all of you to consider that as a career path too, especially to the young folks who are in the room and who've been prominently participating. So I hold, as mentioned, a bachelor's in government, but a master's in educational administration and leadership. And so my greatest joy, especially these days, is being in the classroom, and I'm honored to lecture and instruct at both the university and the high school level, and of course at conferences and conventions worldwide. I got my start at the United Nations sort of with the NAACP as advocates in Geneva. And today I do serve on a number of boards that enable me to lead and serve humanity on the causes that are near and dear to my heart and my kuleana, as they say in Hawaii, my responsibility. So just to kind of center the conversation for me, we're about halfway through this summit, and as I reflect on our charge for this particular session, we're unpacking the power of partnering for peace and keyword prosperity. And as we do that, I'm filled with a sense of optimism and inspiration. Dr. Proctor, who was there with us in DC, my personal space to inspire at this juncture in history and what we're creating is enormous. And I'm so grateful for her work and leadership as well. So the discussions and ideas here that we've shared, I think you've reaffirmed our collective commitment to building a future where peace and prosperity ultimately go hand in hand. And so I just wanted to offer a few ideas, and I know we'll go deeper through the additional sharing, and we'll try to expedite this so that we can get to some of those brilliant questions during the Q&A. So the first thing, just to offer kind of a framework of where I'm coming from, is we have to understand and recognize that peace and prosperity are indeed interconnected. I'm also a program manager for an organization called Seeds of Peace, and we support 360-degree community leaders, parents, teachers, educators, decision makers, et cetera, and coming together to build more peaceful, harmonious coexistence together. And a lot of that has to do with looking at indicators and achieving the SDGs in their communities, wherever they are. But we can't achieve true prosperity without peace. And conversely, sustainable peace can only thrive in an environment of shared prosperity and collaboration and cooperation. So partnership, we have to start thinking of in this endeavor is not just a choice or an opportunity, but as a necessity. So that's the first thing. Second, we're witnessing the power of collaboration and inclusivity all around us. And the good news is that we're just getting started. So the diverse perspectives and expertise brought together, in this session and throughout this the conversations that are taking place have enriched our understanding of the challenges as well as the opportunities that lie before us. And so, particularly for the young folks who are listening, it's by embracing collaboration that we can tap into the collective wisdom and strength of our global community in a way that's not only unparalleled, but totally necessary for us to become those Jedi warriors that Dr. Proctor talked about, those champions of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that's wherever we are, and that's whatever the projects are that we're working on, and whatever the field of study that we have in our respective sectors as we build out this better, more sustainable interstellar and intergalactic world, right? Third, we have to acknowledge that partnerships are not confined to borders and boundaries. And this convening gives us sort of a roadmap to start to experience that. The challenges we face, whether in outer space or Earth, transcend national borders. So I'm grateful to be invited to global conversations around these issues. That overview effect and that experience and that aha moment that gets created can no longer be limited to those who have crossed the Kármán line, but we can aim to recreate that in our values, in our contributions, and even technology. I think folks are talking about utilizing VR in more accessible ways so that people can really have that light bulb go off and have that be a catalyst for action. But strong partnerships and international cooperation help us to provide a pathway to addressing challenges more effectively. So I am excited to hear your ideas and perspectives and best practices as we look at ways we can foster partnerships that help bridge divides, promote inclusivity, and ultimately drive the positive changes that we want to see. But we're only going to be able to create the future where peace and prosperity are not just aspirations, but lived realities for everyone if we transform our insights and ideas into concrete actions. And so I look forward to kind of getting into the framework that this conference is anchored into and to share a little bit more from my vantage point as both an advocate and an educator, because ultimately the future of space and the advancement of space technology in Africa relies on our commitment to advocacy, equity, education in every industry and every sector. So
well, thank you for your comments.
And we'll be happy to share more about specific opportunities.
All right, thank you for your comments. And so thank you for those opening remarks and highlighting the importance of collaboration. And so that is critical to progressing anything when it comes to peace. And so we had one final panelist, Dr. Patrick Bubiti. He's not on the screen, so I'm assuming he's not available anymore, correct? All right, so with that, we're gonna go into discussion. So I have a couple of questions, and what I want this to be is a round robin. So if another speaker or panelist says something that sparks an interest in you, feel free to comment on it as well. And so this is really an opportunity for us to engage in a dynamic discussion to look at how can we strategically look at peace and look at how it impacts our approach to space and what we should be planning moving forward. So one of the key questions that I had, and also in my conversations with Dr. Nelson, is really focusing on challenges. So there was a theme somewhat that I heard through your conversation, a focus on how can we leverage data as a deciding factor, strategically using design thinking, and then also a focus on looking at engaging our youth, engaging the future designers of space, and building out that technology is really critical in collaboration. So one of the things I am interested to know is, as you're looking to the future and what the SDGs are asking us to do, what is that one area that your organization needs to focus on when it comes to that intersection between collaboration for peace and data? What is the conversation happening in your organization?
Thank you for the question. So as a university, a higher education institute, so of course our aim is to collaborate in terms of enhancing the quality of the education. Especially Jomo Kenyatta University Oaseas project is trying to collaborate with the other aerospace engineering related departments like Kenyatta University as well as the Technical University of Kenya. So if we can collaborate and establish a consortium to spearhead our research in this field, it will be more appreciated. And also, what we are trying to do and what we have not done so far is outreach to the secondary school and the primary school to enhance the this awareness in terms of space engineering, because rocket science, satellite technology, this will drive the interest of the children. So what we are thinking about is to organize such a kind of lecture, mini lecture, to experience this small-scale rocket launch, as well as the technical kind of training for the youngers. And as well as that, I think it's our other interest is collaborating with the public and private sector out of our organization. And we had an idea to establish a community of the model rocket in Kenya. So there are many international organizations working on model rocketry. Unfortunately, we don't have one in Kenya. One of the limiting factors is the importation of a rocket motor, which hinders us to work on it, because most of the students are not aware of the this harmless, the danger of the handling with the chemicals. So what we can do, if we can produce, or maybe if industry help us to create a small-scale straight rocket motor with which having very safe capacity, I think we can organize such a community to spread, to outreach our activity to the society. Thank you.
So from digital health perspective, the program has been there in the last 3-4 years, and in the learning phase, we worked in different countries to support the idea of a whole data key for the continent. So having worked in Sierra Leone, Senegal, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, we're able to see that there are big gaps between these countries. So our focal points initially were like Kenya Space Agency, then moving to West Africa, we are looking at the statistical agencies who really need the data for informing the government in terms of investments. So investments in data, investments in the people, investments in the capacity. Then in those 3 or 5 countries and scaling up to the 55 countries, we're able to see now that the other gap then is the youth. We've left them out. So 2 years ago, we started something called an innovation challenge. So we had an innovation around food security. So we had a farm in private sector in Ghana owned by young people, and another one in Kenya called Agribora. Just trying to see how we can support the young people. And then now recently we had a challenge last year with the Youth Mappers, which is a global network of universities. So like in Africa, we even had a situation where we had the challenge for Africa, but someone from Brazil was able to help their friends in Mozambique, because you know that brotherhood and keeping in touch in tandem. So we saw the young people, we worked with them the last few months, and they are coming up with some innovations around their countries. So like one in Uganda, working on land restoration in a forest, another one in Tanzania, something on water management, another one in Sierra Leone, something on working with the communities in terms of managing the water resources, and another one in, the other one was, there were 4 programs, and then we also had engagements with Africa Women in GIS as well. So we are targeting these small groups which have this network of closing the gap of the age, because then the work we do is very nice for now, but sustainability means that we train the young people to continue the young work. And also myself being here at these venues at high school at the Department of Geomatics just here a few years ago, and I'm always happy to come back and support our department led by Dr. Masi. Thank you.
For us, I would say that we actually utilize our graduates in the communities, and they work as catalysts. Catalysts for development and mindset change. And I think, and also work as collaboration points between NGOs, governments, researchers, academia, and that kind of thing for this kind of sustainable development. I'd say the challenge would be our ability to leverage on the kind of knowledge or data that is out there for the betterment of the communities, because our volunteers stay for 1 year in the communities. And because of that integration and using the human-centered design and community-led development, you find that the projects or the development, they are actually sustainable. And it is the sustainability that we are looking for. So if, as an organization, we'll be able to leverage on the kind of data that is being generated and know how to then use it to collaborate and utilize it in the communities for sustainable development, and that would really be the thing that would help the communities at this point.
Thank you. Any comments from online?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. In our work at Seeds of Peace, so from what I understand the question to be, I am having a little bit of difficulty hearing you all. But in our work at Seeds of Peace and the Matanaga Institute, we're actively shifting around the narrative from, peace not just as the absence of war, which we call negative peace, but this more positive and proactive approach to peace building. And so building peace and equity in outer space and across the industry, regardless of sector and the different pathways and trajectories that we're all on here, is of paramount importance for the future of humanity and the sustainable development of the continent and our planet. And so some reasons why focusing on peace and equity in outer space is crucial. First of all, prioritizing peace and equity in this work allows us to create a foundation for sustainable cooperation, the prevention of conflicts, the preservation of global commons, fostering scientific collaboration, addressing global challenges, promoting social justice, and last but most certainly not least, as has been mentioned, the inspiration of future generations. So be happy to share a little bit more just to kind of break those down. I mean, when we think about this whole idea of not just international cooperation, but ensuring that it's sustainable, our activities involve already numerous countries, whether it's across the continent or globally, as well as organizations and entities that are required to work together. And by promoting peace and equity, we can foster the levels of trust and collaboration that will enable sustained cooperation among nations and try to maintain the status quo in a peaceful and harmonious manner. And this is super, super essential for successful continued exploration, research, and utilization of outer space resource for the benefit of everyone. Conflict prevention, multiple actors are pursuing their own interests already, and without the proper regulations and commitment to peaceful coexistence, there is a continued risk of conflicts arising. And so we've got to continue to work and find policy solutions. And, the SDGs were the first time that all 163 came together and agreed. And now we've got to come back and agree about what is, as my husband's looking at, what does human rights look like as we venture into outer space? How can we
that's
prevent
a really interesting question. What does human rights look like as we venture into human space? And I think that that's an intriguing one, because we've been talking a little bit about engaging our youth, right? And making them a part of the solution, looking at data, and really looking at what are some of the systems and processes and different tools we put in place to really deploy programs that when we're talking about space and we're talking about basically peace, we're looking at what is space for Earth. Because one of the things that I've heard a lot about is with our young people is sometimes there's not an interest in space because they don't see how it's helping the Earth. And so some of the things that you guys have highlighted here today are really focusing a lot on that. I see that we've had an opportunity to have Patrick join in into the conversation, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Patrick. And so right now, one of the questions that we're focused on, and maybe you can touch on it as you weave in your introduction slightly, is just strategically looking at your organization, the Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies with the University of Nairobi, you're thinking about peace and you're thinking about space and you're thinking about the youth, how are you tackling that problem? Do you have audio? Dr. Patrick, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am available.
Yeah, so the question was, given the time, just trying to weave you into the conversation where we're at. And so the question that we have is, we're looking at, you're from the organization of the Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies with the University of Nairobi. And a lot of our speakers have briefly touched on what they're doing in the STEM place pre-college on trying to really engage the youth and sometimes college students in peace in terms of what we're doing with space. And so just looking at your role with the university, how are you in touch with the youth? How are you leveraging your role to drive engagement in space with that lens of peace?
Oh, thank you very much for this opportunity. I've shared my presentation, but I think maybe in the interest of time, it may not be able to project. But basically, I am the field of diplomacy, and now we are in the era of space diplomacy. Space diplomacy, because outer space is one of the global commons which should be available to all human beings, and just like the deep seas, the outer space is very important. And we know very well that different countries have different capabilities in the exploration of the outer space. And that's where we come in the essence of collaboration. I'm aware that Kenya has made efforts, with regard to exploitation of the outer space, especially with the launch of Taifa 1, which is now in the orbit, and it's able to communicate with the Earth station. I saw the clip on our media, which was played earlier before the beginning of this session, which outlined the effort that the government is making. Yeah, but the main focus here is how we can leverage on space technology and the resources to achieve sustainable development goals. So aspect of equity and fairness with regard to how we locate our gadgets in the space is very important. You find that different countries have taken advantage, especially those from the north, to place their satellites in very strategic places at the expense of developing countries which are still catching up with the technology. And I think this is an important issue that needs to be brought on board as the world now moves to the space area. How equitable is the utilization of these resources? How are countries collaborating? And now that's exactly the essence of space diplomacy. So the accessibility of the necessary technology, affordability of that technology, and equity in the distribution of the space resources is of global concern. Thank you.
I'm really glad you brought up that point in terms of there's already resources being used in space and they're in strategic locations. And then you have highlighted that data is free. And you also highlighted the fact that you try to leverage those local materials. So how are you guys handling this current predicament? How are your organizations tackling that problem that Dr. Patrick just highlighted?
Well, I come from a learning institution, maybe before it comes in. is that as a learning institution, the University of Nairobi has a developed curriculum. We have a Department of Engineering, and where studies are available to students. And so we collaborate with the Sustainable Development Goals Network. We bring awareness of some of the available technologies and resources and opportunities to students and staff at the University of Nairobi. Yeah, sorry for that intervention, but I thought it was important for me to mention that. Please proceed.
Thank you. So just briefly, so regarding the equity, I think I need to emphasize the situation where we are. So as I mentioned, we are working on the locally available materials, which is good, which requires our creativity. Now, the issue is when we try to collaborate, sometimes we are out of the circle. What it means is importation is not allowed because of the concern of kind of defense-related issues. And also the information, technical information is sometimes limited to be shared. So sharing the information equally is not possible, sometimes not possible. So in terms of this, what we can do is we can start from local community, which I mentioned, also establishing a community in the region, let's say in Eastern African community, so that we can grow our capability in terms of this activity. Thank you.
So in terms of equity, the Digital Africa program was actually born in Australia as part of the Digital Hub Australia. So it's like more of north to south collaboration. So we are bringing all those algorithms to empower Africa. Some of the tools we have, like coastlines, things which are also done in the development world, so that we leave no one in Africa behind. Also, we have these strong collaborations through a group, some of you have heard, called Committee of Earth Observation Satellites. It's called CEOS, so it brings different space agencies to make sure that our people are able to access the same data sets that the other people are able to access in the West. So they're actually empowering the continent and also working with different universities. The platform is free. Even today, I think we've developed some networks that guys will be able to access the platform for training, for teaching, and also for empowering students to do projects in their communities, to empower their communities. So that one day, one student is asked by their parents, what can you do for your community? They have something in mind after they finish the university. Thank you.
I like that last question. Don't ask what the country will do for you, but what you can do for your country, and in this case for your continent and for Mother Earth. And that is really what our motto is when we deal with students and youth graduates, when we tell them to go out to the communities and make a difference with the knowledge that they have. I think in terms of equity, because we do not do direct research, however, we do take our volunteers, our graduates through what we call pre-service training and in-service training. And for us, it's to leverage organizations and networks that have this kind of information that they can come and share with this youth, so that then they can take that knowledge and see how can they then apply it in the communities where they're serving for 1 year. So that's what we do.
And I think I also have a colleague in the panel from Gordon, Felix. You have an intervention with this one. He's done a lot of programs with the communities. Just making sure we leave no one behind.
And you know, as I'm hearing this conversation, so many ideas are coming. And as I'm hearing this conversation, so many ideas are flowing into what then this is mean for creating a project in the Marsabit region, which is so under-resourced. First of all, you have a wide open space in which to test all your rockets. We have Nesby here, which has a lot of experience in working with creating student clubs and partnering with clubs across different universities. So I'm seeing already Nesby creating a chapter here at JQuat, which would allow them to therefore help to provide some additional resources within the constraints of the importation rules, but we have to find a way to work within those countries and still get that done, because we have to get the knowledge out. as I'm hearing from what you're doing, you're already working in a very very, let's say, global space. You already know how to do this. So your work that you're doing on data, if we're talking about equipping people at the base, it's no point we're building a facility out there in Marsabit and have to be tracking people back and forth. There are lots of students who come from Marsabit who would probably love to be closer to home. And then they have also the high school students there. We talk about education. Everything has changed. COVID has given us an opportunity to do something different. So there's absolutely no reason why, with your expertise already, if you can say, okay, let's create a module that will be able to be taught in the high schools in those regions. Now we don't have to worry about, we can say, okay, right 2 years from now, people in Marsabit should not be having their animals dying from frost. If we have put a climate thing out there, we have taught them how to read it. They can predict that there's going to be a frost in 2 nights. They can say, okay, here's how we normally do it, but why don't we change it? And they know how to talk to each other. Your people can go out there with them for a year or 2, saying, hey, here's, so you're going to train maybe someone from Marsabit or somebody from Ghana who has a similar, from Niger or wherever, to go up to Marsabit and say, hey, over in Niger, here's how we do it. And then you have this cross-fertilization of a really practical use of space data. It's going to solve a real world problem at the base. And we move this conversation. For years, I've been trying to explain to the World Bank, and they're not listening. Granted, we had the African Development Bank here this morning, and begin to think strategically, how do we get them talking to each other? What buttons can I push in Washington to hold that conversation? That, here's a problem, for example. In the US, we have women engineers who can't get tenure because they don't have enough international experience. Now we have an opportunity here. We have universities here that say, okay, come and do your engineering research here. And then now they have international experience. But I've said, let it not be this highbrow research. If the World Bank is going to fund it, it needs to be tied to an issue like a climate challenge or energy challenge or water challenge. And now we have a project that is solving 3 or 4 or 5 different people's problems. So that is what we're talking about when we say a transdisciplinary conversation, and why I think somebody said yesterday, they're not used to having a kind of a conversation like this where different people in the room. When you get triggered by something and you say, this is weird, you might feel uncomfortable because you're used to working in I'm only with GIS people, I'm only with, rocket people, I'm only with, data people. But the point of a conversation like this is, the SDGs require that we work from a systems design thinking process. And as you said rightly, we've got to do design thinking at all levels of the conversation. So I'm really excited about what could come out of this conversation.
And so I really appreciate you bringing that up and bringing us back home in terms of what are we doing systematically as you guys are all listening to each other and looking at our organizations. What's that next collaboration that is needed? And I definitely want to start off with Ezra here, just given some of the work that you've been doing with the Center for Global Africa, and then hearing what is needed when we talk about climate change. And then after that, I want to open it up for a few questions, but Ezra, can you lead us there?
Yeah, thank you. If I heard your question correctly, I'm having some difficulty with the audio. But I think one of the things that I can say directly is there are 4 basic areas that I'm really excited about exploring with the group in the follow-up steps. One of which is being part of the advocacy and agency for policy creation, directly related to shaping the kinds of outcomes that we would like to ideally see. There are a lot of resources that are there here in the U.S. And globally as well that we could look at to create or to shape that policy around to directly have the body of knowledge and the targeted aims that will really accelerate Africa in terms of Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2063. The second is education and capacity building, that we could work jointly with each other. As it was just mentioned, professors here can benefit from the need for research in Africa and vice versa. Then the third is technology transfer and knowledge and experience sharing that's necessary. And then the fourth is identifying resources, and funding, and investors that can connect what we call, our academic, governmental, economic model, where there's an integrated approach so that private sector partnering is critical to what makes the research possible, in conjunction with the cooperative platforms that are necessary for governments to provide. So those are the four areas that I would like to see us look at further exploring.
Thank you for sharing that. So everybody, you've heard transdisciplinary approach. There's opportunities for data. There's opportunities for STEM engagement, and also just having a collaborative mindset, and then also understanding where different investments have been made in space and understanding the impact today and in the future. What are some of the questions that have been going through your minds as you've been listening to our panelists today? We have time for about two questions, and so if there's any questions in the room.
Yeah, I have one question or one observation with the rocket project. I thought it was really great. You mentioned a point that it's been difficult getting materials from outside, so we've been ground sourcing it, and it makes me think about the idea of a lot of the essential materials are already here. It gets sent out, put together, and then sent back to us. So how expansive do you think this could help in just our overall perspective of doing it here without outsourcing it and getting the product back?
Right. Thank you very much for the question. So this is an interesting question. Our aim is to develop a rocket. At the same time, this is also the process of the capacity building. So I was, in terms of material, I was frustrated. However, this is becoming a good opportunity for the students to learn, like how to solve the issues, because sometimes there are constraints, which is inevitable. So this material constraint is something that drives a creativity of the students in a way. So I think outsourcing can be done. And of course, we are doing, for some parts we are doing, like for example, the printed circuit board, we are ordering. Sometimes we are asking for Chinese factory to manufacture, so we are sending the data and they ship out the product to us. But for the most of the cases, we are making in-house using etching, using chemicals, which is locally available. So I think constraints of the material, maybe at some point, outsourcing should be considered. But for the most of the cases, we are taking it as challenges to drive our creativity.
I really appreciate that comment. So the organization that Dr. Nelson mentioned that I'm a part of is the National Society of Black Engineers. And so I lead the Aerospace Special Interest Group. And then there is my outreach director makes the same comment in terms of when you don't have access to certain materials, it causes you to innovate. And so that's a very unique position to be in. You really open up the minds to you're having to be more creative. And so we're at time here. And so what I really would like each of our panelists to do is kind of leave us with one word in terms of with what Dr. Nelson has in mind. We are all here because there is the astronaut analog that they're planning on deploying and really building out this transdisciplinary team to understand where we need to go forward. So there is a one word, one piece of advice that you can give the team that's actionable, that's going to turn into a product or a process or something in the future. What would that be? And who wants to go first?
I think the opportunities can be intentional, connect different partners, and also diversity. So in our program, we've learned kind of support in English. So we have English and French, and soon we have in Portuguese for the countries. So maybe soon I'll be talking to Byron's mother tongue so that I can reach the villagers. Thank you.
And if I could say 3 words, not one, I would say ideas are currencies, meaning that, you know, it's our innovations and deep ideas in our minds that, you know, we have to give life to, and, you know, they drive resourcing and they gravitate the necessary kinds of capacity building things that will make those ideas actually, you know, bear fruit.
Okay, what I'd say is that as the project goes into Mars a bit and the analog trial goes on, is that as you approach communities, don't think of them as complex masses of needs and problems, but as a diverse capability web full of gifts and assets. And I'd also like to say that there was a comment you made that sometimes this thing of space looks so out there that the youth are not able to connect with it, is that find a good storyteller who can change and really talk about this research of space and how it is practical and applicable and useful for us here on Earth.
Maybe just briefly mentioning about use of the rocket, because most of the people are not aware of the importance of space engineering technology. So we have to create awareness among the people. What I observed in the rocket project with the students was that this the kind of the function of rocket is basically the primary target is bringing the satellite or load to the orbit, but this topic itself is really exciting. So because it requires a lot of energy, a lot of precision, a lot of control. So this is extreme. So in terms of engineering, this is really interesting topic which students never thought about. So I think by creating a community, we can encourage the higher education and also the quality education, any primary education, secondary education, and so on. Thank you.
Fantastic. Could you give our panelists a round of applause, please? This is so great. This really is building up to where we're going. As you talk about storytelling, we are going to Mars a bit on Thursday. We're spending 5 days. We will come back the 18th, 19th, and 20th. The 20th is International Moon Day. So the 18th and 19th, we're having a hackathon simulation, trying to test out what an African hackathon will look like. And we're also having a storytelling for Moon Day, and that will be at Noir Gallery. We're partnering with Leo Sky. I think we have somebody from Leo Sky, but they are somewhere around. Yeah, there they are. We're partnering with Leo Sky to do a storytelling. They have been collecting stories about the moon. And my one-on-one show, Moon Runnings, talks about stories from around Africa and around the world about the moon. We're partnering to tell a new improv version of that story. And that'll be from 4 to 6 at Noir Gallery on Muzangaro Road. So you're all invited on International Moon Day for that. So thank you all. Now it's time for lunch, take a break. Please be back here by 12:30. If you are not done eating, bring your food in. We want to have our armchair chat. We have an astronaut. Hold on. Lunch is going to be late again. I told him 12 to 1:30. All right. So lunch is going to be late. So we'll take a break here. Thank you, guys. So we're going to try and bring on our, so this panel is now officially closed. Let's take a quick bio break and get back here. And that means that you'll have to have lunch while the panel in the afternoon is going on. We cannot have our panelists waiting. This is not acceptable. Okay, so we have already our astronaut is here backstage. Let's just go straight into that, but maybe just take a 5-minute stretch and come straight back so we can get started by quarter past 12, all right? Thank you. Thanks, guys. Give him a hand.
Boy, that the hand is very thank you. Come on.